Okie dokie. I have no idea if you guys can hear me or see me. For all we know, I could be talking to myself for the next hour. If you are tuning in, just pop a little comment or a emoji there to say you can hear me. Lisa, hey, I can hear you. Perfect. This is exciting. All right. Well, you know what? I'm just going to get into it because I know some people can be listening in now, but then some of you might be listening in afterwards. So either way, you're going to be listening in to me and my cat. Are you really going to have a bath right there, right now? Can you do that somewhere else, please? Anyway, let's persist. Jessica, it is bedtime for me. Love ya. My hair looks gorgeous. Oh, thank you. I'm going to answer your questions. Brianna can hear. Okay, everyone can hear. This is sweet. All right. Yes, this is my cat, Coco. She's fucking off right now, so that's good. Thank you, everyone, for putting in all your questions. I am the last of the first round of Q&A, so I'm pretty rapt to just, finish it all off, and then we can always see where we go from there. But from what I can see, it's already heaps of fun, even for us coaches. So I can see us doing this in the future. So there's been heaps of questions submitted. I'm just going to work my way through them, and I even wrote them all down. So hopefully I didn't miss them. If I did, I'm sorry in advance. But Lisa has sent in a couple of questions this week. And her first question was, in great detail, please explain how you keep your veg fresh for a week. Also, please explain to you how autocorrect has impacted your life. Lisa. So for everyone who doesn't know, in my other Facebook group called the PCOS podcast, we've got quite a few members in there. One of the girls actually asked the question in how I keep fresh vegetables in the fridge for a week without them going like soggy or moldy or what have you. And in my response, my autocorrect actually just said vag, so VAG. And my suggestion to keeping my vag fresh for a week was to put everything into a container. Don't put the lid on, but just put a sheet of paper towel over it and then put it in the fridge. And that allows the air to circulate without any condensation building up. And it just helps keep everything fresh. So here I am in my group telling this girl how I keep my vagina fresh when that's not really the point. So autocorrect will continue to impact my life, hopefully in hilarious ways, just like that, because pretty fucking hilarious. But that's in fact how this keeps your vegetables fresh. So for everyone who likes to prep a lot of salad stuff, it's a good tip because you can get a big container and instead of putting the lid on it, so if you're chopping up a whole heap of vegetables, instead of putting the lid on it, you leave the lid off, put paper towel over it, and you shove it in the fridge, and that's enough to keep the vegetables fresh. Of course, if you're using liquid veggies like cucumber, I find capsicum can get a little bit soggy. Those sort of things you've got to keep doing like top-ups, but for everything else like carrots and broccoli and all that kind of stuff that can stay fresh, that's really how it's done. I have no tips on how to keep your vagina fresh for a whole week. Don't use paper towel. But yeah, thank you, Lisa, for that question. I can't wait to see how autocorrect continues to impact my life. That was a good one. Jessica has asked a question. How many gym crushes do you have currently, and how much longer until you found me a fiance? Okay, so Jess sent me a message one day and has also really, she should be the one answering this question. We've agreed that if I find her a gym fiance, then she can move to Australia and be with us. Now, how many gym crushes do I have currently? All right, so I was thinking about this morning because I knew it was coming up. I actually have 4 gym crushes right now. So the main one is that main dude who, I don't even know who he is. All I know is that he works away, because one time I asked him where he'd been and he said he'd been at work and he works away. And that was pretty much the end of our conversation. Or at least I thought it was, because he smiled and I didn't hear anything else after that. Anyway, so he's like my main gym crush. But the other 3 is shared between Tim and I, who's my actual like boyfriend, partner, fiance. So we share gym crushes, and there's actually a couple, like they're also boyfriend and girlfriend. They go to the gym together, and she has got like the biggest, fattest ass, like fat with a PH, I have ever seen, and it is just like you can't help but stare at it. It's amazing. And he's also really good looking, so he does squats really well. So those 3 are my gym crushes, and then we also have another girl gym crush who just has like shoulders for days, and she just looks like the hottest things on legs. So she's not there a lot, so it's really unreliable. So that's why we need like 4 gym crushes, because sometimes our original crush isn't there. So yeah, we've got 2 guys and 2 girls. And Jess, I'm not sharing my crushes with you, because from what I hear from your stories, you've already found your fiance at your own gym. So that's cool. And I can't wait to see how this story develops. I think you should share it with the rest of the group, because I know you just sent me a personal message. But that's a really good win. I'm so proud of you. Yay. Tell me your tips on how you speak to them, please. Jess has also asked another question though, unrelated to my crushes, which is, outside of health and fitness stuff, what do you like to do for fun? So I actually had a little think about this. Oh God, I really, the first thing that came to mind is sunbaking and going to the beach. I love going to the beach, sunbaking, because who doesn't like to be tanned? I'm a bit pasty right now, so I do love going to the beach and sunbaking. It's like a forced downtime for me. I do run pretty wired a lot of the time, if you can't tell, and we all have busy lives, just like everybody else in our group. So going to the beach and sunbaking is my forced, unwind time. And I like to go there either with friends or just even on my own, and I'll just listen to like podcasts or music, or listen to an audiobook. And I find that even if it's just a half an hour, I always come home feeling really relaxed and reset. So that's definitely one of my favorite things to do. I also like to go to coffee shops and like people watch. I really find like watching people quite interesting, not in a judgy way, but in a inquisitive way. And I always sit there and I don't know, you guys are probably going to laugh, but I sit there and I'm like, well, I wonder what they do for work. I wonder what, their whole life story is. And in doing that, I have collected quite stories over the years. And one of my dream goals is to go to Paris and sit in front of a coffee shop and just overlook the Eiffel Tower and just watch people ride bikes past with their breadsticks in like a red beret. I don't even know if that happens, but that's on my before I die list. I actually have a funny story about that. One time I was sitting in a coffee shop in Melbourne, and behind me sat were 3 prostitutes, and fuck me, was that story good. I was like sitting there devouring my coffee, and like over the slowest, like seriously, it was freezing cold by the time I finished it, but it was a quality story. They were just like talking about all their clients and what men had asked them to do, and they were just, obviously they didn't work together, but they'd all caught up for a coffee, and it was like the juiciest shit, right? You can't get that if you don't stay at the coffee shops long enough. So anyway, that's one of my favorite things to do, alongside going to the beach and sunbaking. But I also love going out, listening to like live music, bands and stuff like that. So usually over the weekends, if I'm after the beach, we head to a pub or a bar or something like that, and check out the live music. Lisa has asked another question, which is, let me just get it up again because my screen went away. Lisa, what is your biggest challenge in working with women with hormonal issues and insulin resistance? Well, insulin resistance is, it's almost one of my favorite things to work with in this line of work, because insulin resistance and PCOS become they're so closely connected. If you're not sure about what insulin resistance is, it's where your insulin function and production is impaired, and it can be quite chronic. And of course that shows up in things like suppressed immunity, fat retention, or excessive fat loss, and you can't put on weight, and it can lead down the trails of affecting your fertility as well if it's severe enough. And I've had this particular thing myself, and because I've addressed it on my own because the doctors couldn't do a thing about it, it's become one of my most favorite, things to coach. So my biggest challenge in working with those hormonal issues and insulin resistance is that, I guess, probably, to be fair, it's probably that this stuff takes time. And when you're looking at addressing hormonal issues and most specifically insulin resistance, the hormonal cells and everything that makes us up doesn't change overnight. It doesn't change over a course of a week. So you can't be healthy and then sick the next week and be drastically different. It takes a lot of time to morph in and out of these situations. So when we're addressing them, and it's always addressed with food and nutrition, and of course exercise, the right prescription of exercise as well, that comes with a challenge, because as with anything, we always expect results to happen overnight, over a course of 3 months, where if these issues under the skin have been happening for years and years and years, it can take a lot longer to start to see results. So that's a really big challenge in working with women who come to me in that field, because quite often we've been, just being fed all this information, and that we should be able to address these things really quickly by way of, these silly diets or supplements and, things like that this process should be the same as well. So my biggest challenge in working with women is that they want to see results straight away, when likely it can take, 12, 18 months before we start to see results. And that's really sucky for me, because, that timeline means that we're coaching people through that. But it's also really quite challenging, at the other hand, for the woman, because they're the ones that have to, persist for that length of time and really beat down those old ways to, suppress, okay, I'm not going to see everything right here, right now. This is a long game. I have to forget about all the short-term shit. I have to forget about all those extreme diets. This is the right way, and this is the timeline that I have to be prepared to invest in. So that's probably the biggest challenge. Identifying the source of the issue isn't really a problem, because the foundation of what we teach as coaches can be fine-tuned to individuals. So it's really cool like that. Lisa, I hope that's answered your question. Matt, now before I ask Matt's question, I can see all these comments flying up, but I can't actually see them. I can just see like alerts. Oh, here we go. Matt, does this method work for sausages? Yeah, wrap it in paper towel, mate. I want you to see how it works. Okay, and Matt's put an episode there, but I can't actually see it because I'm coming off my phone. So I'm assuming it's to a podcast because it's got Spotify. Wonderful. So Matt's asked the question. The next one is, what's the most unusual injury you've ever sustained, and how did it happen? look, let's just be honest, it happened during sex. And that's all I'm going to say. I threw my back out and I was out for a good 12 weeks. And okay, yes, Matt, thank you for the insulin podcast. Yep. Sorry, I'm just getting a bit of a delay here. Yeah, Matt's just put the insulin resistance podcast episode up. Yeah, thank you. I am trying to avoid the unusual injury question, but yes, let's just say it's happened in sex, and I had to tell the osteopath that it was me reaching into the cupboard. And that was enough to satisfy him, so therefore it's enough to satisfy you guys too. Matt, next question. Is the November printout ready? If so, yes, can you please upload it? Matt, I have the November printout ready here for you. Okay, I'm not sure if that's showing up because we're in selfie mode right here, but that's it. I will upload it to the group later on. I hope that's really helpful for everyone. I want to see all of that in the photos for November. Okay? Thank you. All right. Matt, you can ask asking for a friend. Yeah, okay. I know who that friend is. It's me. Evie, you've asked a serious question. Thank you. How did PCOS hold you back in the past from your goals? And how do you today not let it to hold you back? Okay, so how did PCOS hold me back in the past from my goals? I had to have a real think about this because I was that sick and that unwell and that hormonally fucked up that I didn't realize to the extent of what I was at the time. I was purely uneducated in the field of PCOS because I was diagnosed so late in my life. And I really feel like if I had have had the knowledge that in what I was doing would have been a red flag to stop, because what I was doing was, very similar to what a lot of people and a lot of clients that are in this group, chronic dieting, over exercising, restricting food, just doing lots of, unrealistic shit, like not sleeping, just late nights, just, putting nails into the coffin at every opportunity. So it held me back in the past from my goals because I didn't understand my body properly and I didn't understand the severity of what it was, let alone be able to take that knowledge and fix it, basically. So once I essentially found out that I had this diagnosis, I went full helter-skelter to try and latch on to some of the information around PCOS and some of the reliable information, which was half the battle, which obviously has led me to do what I do now. And that was how I started my goals. But once I found the solution, or a collection of solutions that I had to start implementing, I was pretty much, referring back to Lisa's question, I was my own biggest challenge because I was fighting against the whole I want results yesterday type of thing. And because I had so many hormonal issues and bad habits from, relationships with food, bad relationship with exercise, I wasn't always prepared, and initially wasn't prepared to see out that timeline, and I wasn't really prepared to accept it. So that's how I was being held back in my own body. And nowadays, because of the effort, honestly, and I'm not one to toot my own horn, but I put in a lot of fucking effort for the first, I'm going to say maybe 4 years of my diagnosis to, working really, really hard. It took me a good chunk of 4 years to rewire my old ways and develop the habits that I have now, rewire my relationship with food, rewire my relationship with exercise, and relearn how to do that the right way. That now my PCOS is not really an issue, which is detriment to the fact, or is a contribution to the fact that I've put in so much effort to rewire the way that I am. So for me now, I am in a maintenance phase where I've put in so much effort. I just have to keep rolling over every week, turning up, cooking for myself, turning up to my gym sessions, giving it my best, making sure that I'm accountable to when I tell myself I need to go to bed, because that's a real struggle for me. I go to bed at, a certain time so that I can be up at a certain time. I have my routines and habits, and that's how I am as healthy as what I am today. So in a sense, PCOS doesn't really hold me back. In saying that though, I will occasionally have a period where I'm wiped out for a day, and it might happen like every third or fourth cycle, because now my periods are every month rather than the old me. I didn't have any. So occasionally I will get the odd painful one, but in that painful period, I know my boundaries and my body so much that I'm usually expecting it, in that I know that I might have had late nights. I might have had alcohol, which usually almost always fucks with my period, which was another unknowingly, contribution way back when I was young. I was, drinking like a fish. So I usually know when to expect a bad period if I've just been abusing the system and my body. So yeah, that's honestly how it holds me back. But now it's basically just a slap in the face to say, Megan, you didn't do the right thing for your body last month or a couple of weeks ago. This is what you get as, a repercussion. And it's not usually pretty nice. And I'm always regretting my decisions back then. So like I said, lucky it doesn't happen very often, but now it comes back down to my lifestyle. Evie, I hope that answers your question. Kelly has asked, what is your favorite MP meal? She's asking all the coaches so she can look for inspo outside my comfort zone. Okay, cool. So I have a heap of like MP meals. Some of them aren't specifically straight from the cookbook. Some of them aren't specifically, from anywhere, but my favorite MP meal is by far the omelette, and it's like the easiest thing to make and the easiest thing to do variations to, because everyone sort of gets stuck in the whole, omelets, okay, you can only have this vegetable, this vegetable, this vegetable, but then you start like doing crazy shit, like adding like freaking strawberries and blueberries, and then pumpkin goes in, and then like Matt's had mince in his, which is awesome, never done that, but would give it a shot. So I love the omelets because they're so versatile, and you can add so many different flavors, so many different ways that it's kind of, nearly every week I'm having them. And what I usually do is specifically not have it 1 week or 2 weeks, so that then I miss it, and then I'll introduce it again, because I'm like, oh God, I miss my omelets. And then I really start to enjoy them like triple fold all over again. My other meal that I'm really digging at the moment is the sweet chili coconut chicken, which is in our resources, and it's also in my ebook. So if you go back to the recipes, that recipe will be in there in our transformation group files. You'll be able to find it in there. That's a really good one. And then I just throw all these like vegetables and stir fry them up, and the sauce on that baby is just like, it's mint. So I hope that helps you, Kelly. She's also said, one of the things I love about you is how happy and positive you are despite the challenge you're having with injury. It's not really a question. I just wanted to let you know how much you amaze me. Kelly, that's really beautiful. Thank you so much. The truth is though, I actually put a little star to make sure I spoke about this. The truth is that I am not some like alien that's always happy and positive. I am just like everybody else. So there are days where I am not as happy. I'm a bit pissed off. I'm a bit irritated. I feel, as if I'm, I get all those normal feelings, like I might be letting myself down. I do have those occasions where I have a bit of self-doubt and I can get stuck in the whole comparing myself to others mentality sometimes, and very conscious about what others might be thinking. But having said that, it's very well managed now. So I love how you think I'm always happy and positive, which is awesome, because 9 times out of 10 I am, but I'm also not immune. I'm not just some alien perfect happy angel. I suffer with the same kind of problems that you guys do. Mia has sent in a question. Thank you, Mia. I've heard you mention hair loss associated with PCOS in your podcast a couple of times. What is your experience with this? I suffer from this as well. So hair loss is a little bit, not complex. I mean, the surface explanation is basically you are on the outside to what you are on the inside. So if your body is quite unhealthy on the inside, whether it's a hormonal issue, a metabolic issue, an immune system, a gut health problem, whatever the problem is, you will portray that on the outside by way of your body odor, by way of your skin integrity. So that's like how thick and hydrated your skin is, the quality of your nails, acne or your skin quality. So you might, have a bit of acne, and it also relates to body hair and head hair as well. So the healthier you are on the inside means that the healthier you are on the outside. But if there's problems on the inside, I can guarantee your ass that there's going to be stuff that's happening on the outside. When it comes to hair loss, this is already dead hair. So the hair we grow under our skin is alive, but once it reaches the surface, there's only like a couple of inches that it's got life in it, but then everything after that is dead hair, essentially. So when it comes to hair loss, the way it is growing and is attaching to the follicle inside is a direct reflection of how healthy you are on the inside. And it could mean that you have a collection of things to address, whether it's your metabolic health. Gut health plays a huge role in, body quality, and I'll say body quality like skin, hair, nails. And if there's any discrepancies there or any deficiencies, you can bet your bottom dollar that hair loss is going to be an issue. Now, your hair might be growing, which is good, but it becomes easily detached, which then means that your body under the surface has got a deficiency somewhere. Now, usually you can pick that up in a blood test, but without seeing Mia, your hormonal profile, I would be taking a stab in the dark. But if your hair is growing and detaching a lot, so it's like you have alopecia, there's definitely a nutrient deficiency there. However, if you've got a lot of thin hair and your hair is chronically thin, that's typically, and again, another sign of a hormonal imbalance. So your quality of hair isn't growing to its fullest before it's released. And 9 times out of 10, what we see there is a deficiency. And I say 9 times out of 10, so it's not almost always, it's just common. 9 times out of 10, if you have thin hair or it's sparse or it breaks easily, typically it comes down to a nutrient deficiency. So if you've been a chronic dieter that's had a lot of food restriction in your life, and you've found that your hair quality has always just been shit to complement that, that's a direct correlation between the two. So Mia, when I talk about, hair loss and things like that, there's usually a hormonal deficiency there, combined with some metabolic deficiencies by way of nutrients. So I hope that kind of half answers your question. I would really like to probably see a hormonal profile before I actually give you any specific advice, but that's how it works, in a general sense. And then it's further diagnosed so you can see where the deficiency is. Nikki, have you ever made a move on any of your gym crushes, and can you film and post it? Oh God. If I had the balls to go and like make a move on any of my gym crushes, I would be like on top of the fucking world, right? Yeah, no, I haven't. But Tim and I have agreed with that one dude that's like my favorite, who's not there, he works away, that if I ever have the balls to go and talk to him, that I can bring him home, and Tim will be okay with that. That's our little agreement. And the same with the other girl too, that's got like the big shoulders. I'm like, go and talk to her. He's like, no, she won't talk to me. So we've got a mutual agreement, but so far I haven't had the courage to talk to him. So I'm getting embarrassed talking about it. He's so gorgeous. Anyway, he's probably an absolute douche in real life, but from afar, and you know, his smile is enough to satisfy me for now. Can you film it and post it? Yeah, okay. Well, I've filmed him before when he's been working out real close, but yeah, I should go and talk to him one day, like proper talk to him, rather than just make little remarks and hey goings. Thanks, Nikki. Put me out of my comfort zone, why not? Nikki, again, with your multitude of injuries, how have you maintained your fitness? You look amazing, so you're clearly doing a lot right despite limitations in the gym. So I do have a few injuries at the moment. I have inflamed tissue in my knee, which is protecting my meniscus. So they're just keeping a really close eye on that, because if it gets any worse, then I can be compromising the meniscus and looking at a tear or a partial tear, which is no good. That's like, you know, crutches for 6 weeks, rehab for like 12 weeks, not cool. So they're keeping an eye on that. But because of my knee, actually, you know what, Matt, this could be another funny injury. So because of my knee, I thought one night we were going out for dinner, I was wearing like new high heels, and I was walking over the curb and my knee just went underneath me, like it just completely gave way. Which meant I fell into the gutter and like smashed my knee up. I smashed out my calf, and ever since then my hip's been fucked. Now it's because I've always had tight glutes. They're always activating really easily and overactivating, you know, especially when they're not supposed to be. So therefore my hips have always been very, very tight. But the fall has definitely, you know, amplified that. So I'm at a position now where I can't even do a full body weight squat without sitting to a bench or a box. And every time I walk upstairs, everything is crunching. We're slowly getting better. But yes, Nikki's right. I have got a lot going on for my body right now. So in saying that, my fitness has dropped off. I am really, really, really restricted in what I can do for ice sessions. And I have been for nearly 5 months now. So I can't do burpees, stair climbs, you know, running or the bike for too long, because it just aggravates my knee and then it becomes painful. Or at the moment it's my hips. So I'm very, very restricted to doing a lot of upper body work, which is exhausting in itself, because then I'm finding that it does impact my upper body weight days. So my fitness actually has dropped off, but what I am still doing is eating all the right food. I'm cooking prepping all my food as I normally would. I'm adjusting my metabolic window, so I'm only still using it when I'm doing those intense exercises, and I'm just making the best of the situation I'm in at the moment, which is all you can do. Yes, exercise is a component, but largely the contributing factors to looking amazing is the food. You know, that's 3/4 of the effort right there. So Nikki, thank you very much for that. My fitness has dropped off, but I am really looking forward to amping that up in the future as I improve. Matt, I always get a bit nervous when I see Matt's posted a comment, but it's actually a good question. Thank you. Can you share a little about your personal history with diets? In particular, what you've done, how it affected you physically, mentally, and emotionally? and what work you had to put in over time to turn this around to where you are now. So I mentioned that like 4-year investment in myself a little while ago. And that had come from a place where a lot of that time was spent unfucking myself from the diets that I had pretty much been doing for, I'm going to say, from when I was 15 all the way up until I was about 26. Now, my first ever diet was Weight Watchers, and it started with Nana putting me onto this thing when we're at school holidays, because she was doing it and I found out about it as well. So by that stage, I was becoming really self-conscious about my body and what my school friends were looking like. And I had been insulted at that time really recently by a school friend saying that I would always be a little bit fat, and it was impossible for me to be basically have the body I have now. So that really cut me, and that comments really stuck with me for a long while and contributes to my reason why I do what I do. But it started off with Weight Watchers, which was where I learnt my first steps on how to restrict food and counting to particular numbers. And then as I got a little bit older, I thought I could go a little bit deeper. You know, when you come like 16, 17, 18, you've got, again, school friends and work friends that are doing diets, and they're, you know, that's where you start hearing about calorie counting, macro counting, food restriction, don't eat this, don't eat that. So that opened up my world to pretty much everything. I've tried everything. So I've tried keto, calorie counting. I went as low as 800 or 700 calories at one stage. Like I was eating less than like a Holocaust victim. So I did that. And then I've done dairy-free, gluten-free, carb-free, sugar-free, low salt. I did this protein thing once where I was eating like 100 grams of protein 3 times a day. And then on the 3rd day, you'd have to have bread or something. It was a bit weird, but a personal trainer put me onto it. So it sounded good at the time. I've taken like weight loss pills. I've done like protein shakes. I've done nearly everything. So yeah, how it affected me physically, well, physically it was contributing to the hormonal disaster that I had become. So it was fueling my fire, and it was getting to that stage where I was ruining my immune system. I was becoming so, how would you say? I was becoming dictated by my body screaming out for food by way of cravings. So I would be constantly craving sugar. I would constantly be craving just food in general, but mostly always sweet things. And I was dictated by that, which then, because I was so depleted in nutrients, that then spiraled into this mentality that, and emotionally, that there was, by that stage, a whole stack of foods that I couldn't eat. I had labeled for myself a whole stack of foods that I couldn't eat. And it got as bad as a coach a dietitian actually, I worked with her for a short time while I was prepping for a fitness show. And she had convinced me that almonds and corn, like corn on the cob or corn, like just corn kernels, were the most toxic foods and fattening foods that I could ever eat for my body. Now that fucking blew my mind, I'm not gonna lie, because at that time I was quite young and I thought I had dieting nailed, but being told that, I was like, holy crap. And so I had spent a good 12 years just collecting all this data about my body that these diets weren't working, therefore I couldn't eat that food. So I just labeled nearly everything as off table. So emotionally I had a really, really bad relationship with food, and it took, the good part of that 4 years was me emotionally adapting to foods, relearning foods that I could eat and relearning the actual value of food, like how much nutrients is in food, how it impacts our body, not only for my condition, but also for things like fat loss, hair quality, because, you know, I didn't have a lot of hair back, you know, when I was very sick. So it took a lot of time and investment to learn about food, what it can do for us and how it impacts us when we eat it, both internally and externally. So yeah, it was hard. And I would say that the first 2 years, I avoided probably a lot of foods, still thinking that perhaps, you know, what we know now is the right way was not the truth. I thought that perhaps they were just telling us that based on other people, and my body was specifically, you know, some way inclined that I was the only one in the world that couldn't eat corn. So yeah, it took a lot of emotional efforts and a lot of backstepping. I did revert a lot of the time back to old ways, and I always found myself reverting back to probably calorie counting at its finest, because that's what I'd probably spent in hindsight a lot more years invested in doing. Not successfully, but that was where my headspace turned. So that's pretty much the effort that I put in now. And what I had to do was essentially what we get all of our clients to do. I had to basically grow my food catalog. So by trying new foods, trying new recipes, every week dipping myself out of a comfort zone and enjoying flavors like soy sauce. I had been conditioned to think that soy sauce was the death of the world, and that's why I was fat and sick. And then when I learned that soy sauce isn't, you know, causing those things, it was like a whole weight had lifted off me, and I was able to enjoy the flavors and all the food creations. So just as much as we encourage you guys to be trying new flavors, that's pretty much the exact way that I had to unfuck myself. So thank you, Matt, for asking that question. Very good question. Also, what would be your top 3 tips for someone suffering from that diet mentality when it comes to this? So this whole, you know, building your own catalog of food is one of them. My top 3, my top 3 is continue to try new foods. Try new foods, be adventurous with flavors, and be okay with making food that you may not like. So as much as I tell you all this food that I eat, there was times where I would cook all this food. I'd make 4 or 5 meals in a week. There might have been occasions where, you know, 2 of those meals I was like, fuck, this is gross. I just won't eat it. And I just didn't like it. And I had to be okay with putting those meals aside and saying, that's cool. If I don't like it at all, or I can't make adaptations to the recipe so that I would enjoy it, I just won't eat that again. I know that. But I had to be okay with then picking up the ball the next week and just trying another whole set of recipes and having my staples and then trying new things as well. So that's the top one. Number 2 is being okay with trusting the process. So a diet mentality can screw you emotionally as well as physically. We know physically our bodies just don't like it, because if they worked, I mean, we would have no issues. We wouldn't be struggling with weight. We wouldn't be struggling with hormonal conditions like PCOS. But emotionally, it does more damage than what we realize. So we have to be okay with relearning and being a beginner. So number 1 is trying new foods, and we have to be okay with being a beginner and trusting the process. The reason me, Courtney, Matt, Andrea do what we do is because we've lived it. We aren't just people that are, you know, in it for sponsorships. We're not being paid huge amounts of money to be promoting some kind of special way. We live and do what we do because we've lived it. And that means we've had to trust the process as well. So trust the process and be okay with failing. And number 3, I would say, oh, Matt, You ask the good questions. You'll ask some shit questions. This is a good one. Top 3. Okay, so we had... I'm going to say that when you're coming out of a diet, be prepared. Be prepared to emotionally adjust yourself in certain environments. So if you're coming out of a diet mentality where you have had a habit of going to a restaurant and ordering something deep fried, covered in sauces and syrup, or, you know, big desserts, emotionally, there's a lot of habitual changes you're going to need to make in those environments where you're eating around others. So I would say that moving away from that diet mentality where you would eat diet food at home and then when you go out it's like a binge, that if you choose to go out and you still want to make healthy choices, you have to be emotionally prepared for that and be making educated decisions based on your own goals. So if it's not a treat meal, then you have to be prepared to make a better choice than what you normally would. Now, I'm saying emotionally because I found that was pretty much me in a nutshell. I would eat diet food at home, but then if we went out, I'd have like, you know, KFC and all that rubbish. That I was really conscious about others and what they were thinking about me while I was making those better choices. I knew I wanted to make those better choices for myself, but I was really self-conscious in a bad way because I would let it affect me afterwards about what my friends or co-workers or people would think about me if I were to make a healthy choice in front of them. And it took me a long time to understand that they are used to seeing me eat, or perhaps you eat in that environment, and you're always used to ordering, you know, big meals, big, you know, perhaps deep fried, sugar-laden meals, that if you all of a sudden make a shift to something like a lean steak with lots of veggies, that they might say, oh, that's a new meal. What's going on there? And if you've had that diet mentality for a long time, that can be a contributing factor to, you know, you holding up the process of your progress. So I would say that that's the top 3 thing, because you have to almost relearn how to act in those old environments that you still might be exposed to, because it's unrealistic to turn around and say, okay, well, I'm on this new, you know, way of eating. I'm definitely going to be eating more vegetables. I'm just going to be choosing a lot of lean meats and what have you. That means I can't eat out, because nearly every restaurant and cafe in the world right now has a healthier choice than, you know, pastries and cakes and stuff like that. So there's always a healthier option, and it's just being mindful about how to react in that environment, in a social setting. Okay, the next one is, we're getting close. So we've got Shanae. Shanae has, she's got a long question. Let me read this out. I really struggle with the all or nothing approach to my programs. I constantly have this battle in my brain, whereas if my meals aren't 100% on point for the week, I feel ashamed, and this results in me never filling out my accountability and meal records. I feel that if I record my meals that are less than ideal, it is a reminder that I've made a mistake and that I struggle with accepting that. I often don't fill my accountability and meal records for this reason. I know it makes it really hard to coach. I'm just looking for some tips and advice to getting out of my own head and pushing past this. I 100% know that I need to get over myself, but it's easier said than done. All right, so the story that's being told here is that there's a lot of, you know, perfection and 100% efforts going into this. Now, on the general sense, I would just like to add, Shanae, that having a perfectionist mentality is not a bad thing. I am a perfectionist. I like to do things the right way, which is why I was so fucking good at dieting, because you know, there's lots of rules and you get to stick to them, and then it's perfect, and then everything else is just no deal. But in that sense, when it comes to dieting and taking a 100% approach, when you're moving away from those diets and that unsuccessful bullshit, the diet mentality can still follow. Now, when you come and work with people like us, like Matt and Courtney, Andrea, myself, we are diet-free, we are doing things the right way, which means we are living by our mistakes. We aren't perfect. We strategically don't eat 100% every week because it's a fantasy land. And when you're trying to take a long-term approach, such as what we're teaching you now, but applying your old mindset of short-term, everything must be perfect, otherwise it's a failure, and you're trying to put it into this long-term approach, you're going to encounter the same problems by way of avoidance, of thinking that you're not doing things correctly, and essentially not being able to access, your full potential by being coached. So there's a couple of layers there. So applying having that diet mentality is the biggest red flag that I can see here. Now, I'm not saying that this is the wrong way, because let's face it, everyone has come into changing their own habits and their own ways with, struggles. And this is a really, really common one, because we're taking our old diet mentality into what we call the metabolic precision lifestyle, whereas a very broad range of general guidelines, but we're taking those guidelines as, okay, this is the rule and this is how it has to be, whereas really they're just guidelines, and this is how we can coach you guys as easily as possible whilst you live normal lives. So what I'm seeing there, Sinead, is a diet mentality. Plus, I would also argue that there is another layer on top of that where there could be a few struggles with the guilt. So I'm seeing here that you get reminded that you've made those mistakes and you can't accept it, that there is a little discrepancy in how you're processing guilt and you feel embarrassed by that. Now, that's really common to see, because if you've carried that mentality from years ago where you're mindful about what other people think, and again, if you're coming to us where we hold fucking zero judgment, you almost like you're putting it on, you're building it up into your own mind and thinking that others will be judging you. So I think that there's probably a little element there into how you're managing your guilt. And I wouldn't say that you need to go away and just cope with it, because it's clearly not working for you, because you're avoiding what you need to do by way of filling out meal records and accountability. But it's all about finding ways to manage your guilt. Now, finding ways to manage your guilt can be done in an assortment of ways. Actually, Matt and Courtney, Matt, if you're still listening, he's probably fucking gone to find more confusing questions for me for next time. Can you please tag, I think it's your season 5. I think it's season 5. There's an podcast episode about guilt. Can you put that into this? Because I feel like it's very relatable. But when it comes to having that all or nothing approach, it's a fantasy land, and you have to be okay with making those mistakes, because let's face it, you've got another 100 years to live and you're going to keep making mistakes. But then the next layer is managing your guilt. So managing your guilt where you deliberately aren't being less than ideal and are deliberately stepping away from the diets that you're used to be doing and approaching things in a realistic way, like what we do now. There comes a time where, to manage your guilt, you have to be able to have thank you, Matt, a bit of a hard chat about yourself, and ask yourself those questions in, are you being realistic? Are your thoughts rational? Are they justified? And being able to reflect on what the task is at hand. So I can guarantee you now that none of the coaches here would be saying, you need to be 100%. So the fear of you not approaching this 100% is going to be irrational. Now, if your goal that you set was to be 80% and you achieved 80%, well, that's amazing. But if you're achieving 80, if your goal is 80% and you're wanting to achieve 100, there's just a little bit of discrepancy there. So it's about managing your guilt and having that chat with yourself about what's realistic, what's actually happening, where your goal is, and where the rationality of your thoughts are, and if it's warranted. I hope that makes sense for you, Shanae. But having said that, I've suffered with this in myself, and that all or nothing approach is not a bad thing because it means that you are very dedicated to yourself. It's a beautiful quality outside of health because it just means that you will always be honest with yourself and you'll just give. But on the flip side, when it comes to your own health, it can backfire. So it's about just recognizing and being aware and then being able to address, those little layers underneath it as to why you might be reacting that way. Andrea, I know that having PCOS has had a huge impact on your life. Yeah, I can say that. And all that comes with it. But can you tell us what the biggest thing you have struggled with and overcame within your journey so far when it comes to your mindset and your thought patterns? Oh, hands down, easily, the freaking, my emotional relationship with food. I had spent 12 years, I'm going to say 12 years, it might be more. It feels like more sometimes, but I had spent so many years just fucking up my relationship with food, sometimes through the help of others too, from GPs, from dietitians that allegedly specialized in PCOS, gynecologists, naturopaths that had fallen into the wrong hands of my health. And I had at one stage handed my health to them thinking that they would be able to help. So they had helped me contribute to my bad relationship with food. And it was easily the biggest struggle to overcome. And I probably underestimated that a whole lot more than what I did at the time, because it was only that when I started my journey and I was, the first month, it's like you're in honeymoon, 12 weeks, you're in your honeymoon period and everything's okay. Then you get to the 4 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years down the track, and then you start to unwrap the layers of your relationship with food. And that was really hard for me because I really underestimated that. I really underestimated how much I had labeled food so badly and how many bad relationships I had with food in specific environments, like what I spoke about, going into social settings, when I was at certain places. So when I went to my parents' house, like they always had a big jar of biscuits and lollies. It was just a habit for me to go there. So I really underestimated how much those habits were holding me back, as well as, my hormonal, basically my condition was just so far amplified by what I was doing to my body. So that was really the biggest thing. When it comes to my condition though, I would have to say that when it comes to my fertility. So years ago, I had been told that I would never be able to have kids. It would be an IVF thing if I was even lucky to have that, because my hormonal platform was so screwed. And when I was told that, years ago, at the time, I was like, yeah, it's okay. I was in a bad relationship. So I was like, you know what? If that's the case, that's going to help things, so no big deal. And I just, I conditioned myself to believe that. But deep down, it was like, okay, well, that kind of sucks. And then as you get older, it's like, your mentality changes and you float in and out of being, inclining to have kids and whatnot. And then finally, when a couple of years ago, when I went back to the doctor and had my my scans and my bloods, it was another doctor, another GP, another ultrasound lady, and she's like, oh my God, everything's like perfect here. Look at you, like you're like textbook. And I was just like dumbfounded. And I was like shaken up. Matt, I'm not sure if you remember the time when I messaged you, but it was full on, because they had told me that basically I was ovulating, I was a prime candidate for natural conception, and nothing was an issue. My PCOS wasn't a problem, and that emotionally like screwed with me for a while, actually, because I had just put myself in this category of PCOS, and that was my prison, to being taken out of that prison, and now I was just being treated as a general person, a general female with no fertility issues whatsoever. And even though it's a good thing, mentally I was like, what? Hey, hang on a minute, what? So now you're saying this? And I was just like, I just started unreasonably questioning myself, and it was a bit crazy. So that was my second struggle after I overcame everything else. And yeah, that's where I am now. So I'm really lucky to be able to have that, but of course I can see how I've come to achieve so many things when I've put in all that effort over time. Andrea also said, I know you have an injury at present, but what are your long-term goals? Where do you see yourself in 1 to 2 years from now? What are your aspirations? Okay, so long-term goal is, I don't know, maybe, hang on, Matt's just said something. You're not sure if I remember. That is the single best message you have ever sent me. If you recall, I stopped driving to message you back. I was in the car park to do some grocery shopping, blown away. Yeah, I was like full ball of my eyes out for days. Sorry, back to Andrea's question. You have an injury? Yes, I fucking do. It's annoying. Long-term goals. Okay, so in the long term, I would love to be able to get back to, honestly, it's going to be so simple, but we have this huge mountain like right near us. It's called Mount Coolum, and it's only probably about a half an hour walk up. Like, it's very, very steep. It's like this. But at the moment, I could not even get up there. I doubt I could even get a quarter of the way. I'll probably get a quarter of the way because it's a bit easier. I wouldn't even get halfway. No way. Though that's on my to-do list, because that is one of the most beautiful views that I have ever seen. And it's one of the coolest little walks. So that's on my long-term goal, because at the moment, I really would struggle to do that. And that's pretty much where I'm at. Where do you see yourself in 1 to 2 years from now? God, it feels like a job interview. Where do you see yourself in 2 years from now? You know what? I don't even know. I'm going to put a label on it, and I'm quite happy with where I'm at now, but emotionally, I'm pretty happy. Actually, emotionally, I would like to be a little less stressed. So, because my body, because I still have PCOS for everyone listening. It's not like it's gone away and it won't come back. If I don't look after myself, my PCOS comes back along with all the problems. So that means I'm still very receptive to stress. And that means that I have to be really, really careful. So I don't get sick and I don't have those painful periods, and I just don't, pack up. My body doesn't pack up underneath me. So 1 to 2 years from now, I would like to be less stressed. I would like to see, I'll probably get another 3 cats, 0 sex injuries. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, like honestly, I would just like to see myself being able to manage stress a little bit better and being able to make a few more choices that, means, I'm less receptive to that. What are your aspirations? Oh, God, I hate this question. My aspirations are to talk to my gym crush. No, well, actually it is, because he's pretty cute. But aspirations are honestly you know what? I feel like I'm so lucky. I live in my dream place. I live in the place I've always wanted to live, even since I was young. So I live in the Sunshine Coast, and it's almost like that has ticked a lot of boxes for me, and it's contributed to me reducing my stress. But my aspirations are honestly just to stay happy, because happiness is really important to me. I've found a lot of value in what makes me happy, because previously I've been a huge people pleaser, and at the detriment of my own health sometimes. So I would say yes to the point where, you know, I would be run down or I couldn't get my own things done, like going to the gym and what have you. And I've let a lot of that dictate me. But now I've prioritized myself and I've realized what makes me happy, and that, you know, I just want to keep doing that because I live in an amazing part of the world. And to be honest, the only dream I have is to go over to Europe and to go there and snowboard and watch those people in France with their red berets and they're on their bike with the breadstick hanging out. I don't even know if that happens in France, but I assume it does because that's what you see in the movies. So yeah, I know that seems a little bit boring, Andrea, but to be honest, I'm a pretty simple person. Hey, like I'm easily pleased. If you make me laugh and treat me well, that's my life happy. You know, I consider that a win. And doing what I do with PCOS and obviously coaching just makes my life, you know, heaven. So thank you for that question, albeit very confusing. Bonus question, why do you have such a nice peach? I'm asking for a friend. Who's your friend, Andrea? Is it my gym crush? No. So I don't know why I have such a nice butt. You and Tim must have the same kind of taste because he thinks the same thing. I would like mine a bit bigger, like my other gym crush, because her ass is fucking amazing. But honestly, I've always had lower body like this. For me, it's not taken a whole heap of effort. So I am not gifted. I still have to put in a lot of work, but I've always struggled with my top half and up. For me, it's always been my guts and my arms that have struggled with, you know, finding shape, losing fat. My lower body's never been an issue. So I do enjoy the genetics, but I don't enjoy, you know, stiff leg deadlifts. I don't enjoy all those things that actually make my ass bigger than what it would be otherwise. Thank you for that. I'll probably have to get Tim on that to add a bit more context as to why I've got such a nice ass. Now that's all of the questions on the event. Let me just see if there's any other questions. Oh, sorry. Getting a phone call while I'm talking. Go away. Bedtime. Okay, yep. Sausages. Yep. Matt, podcast on insulin. Brianna, this is my biggest fear. I think you're referring to the sex injury. They happen. You just got to get over it. Just don't tell the osteo. All right, that's it for the questions, guys. If you have anything else, you can wait till next time, or you can pop it in the questions now. Matt, I am pretty damn sure we'll be just rolling these over because these are so fun. I can't believe I thought, honestly, Matt, I thought you were gonna just burn me with some of these questions, but I feel like I got out of it this time. Thank you for being so kind. All right, thanks everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll catch up with you next time.